So all of us who live in Australia will be used to the notion of standards, ratings, safeguarding in all sorts of different forms. Now, here are some examples. They'll probably be very, very familiar to you. So our society is awash with safeguarding, with structure, with limitations, with lines that can't be crossed, with regimens that must be followed. So looking at a few up there, is there anything there that's unfamiliar to you? I wouldn't have thought so. In fact, I'm sure that each of you can come up with at least one extra one. Any takers from the audience? There's prizes. ACNC, that's an excellent one. What about just for the general public?
Well, we had lockdown.
Brilliant one, Bridie, thank you. Yep.
TV shows have to meet.
Excellent, excellent. Yep. Unless there's any more, we'll move on. I don't want to labour the point. Just want to demonstrate that we as human beings, whenever we come together, whether it's a contemporary or historical, or dare I say, a prehistorical in the true context of the term society, as human beings, we make rules because it's a good way to get along. So people, believe it or not, many learned people have actually stated that Australia, our country, is one of the most regulated countries in the world. For those of you who have travelled, I'm sure you probably would in some ways agree. We do have a heck of a lot of rules. The laid-back, she'll be right Aussie. If that's true, that we are in fact such a highly regulated society, why might that be? Apart from the obvious, things such as minimising traffic chaos, setting some basic expectations amongst certain professions, ensuring we don't inadvertently top ourselves with medications that have been willy-nilly scraped into a tablet press. We do, of course, realise that the minimisation of harm or litigation is another big, massive industry, and so it should be. But I'm not referring to regulation based on fear. Do you think this huge concern with regulation might mostly have something to do with actually protecting things that are precious? Things like human lives? I actually do. Human beings generally live a reasonably long time. The current Australian lifespan, any guesses as at 2020? Very good. In fact, it's a bit over 84, but we'll take 85, since in fact you were the first buzzer pressed. Most of us like to make sure that those years are as free as possible from harm and have as high as possible likelihood that we can, for the most part, lead lives of safety, certainty, happiness and good health, amongst many other things. There we are, that's a nice little group of people getting along well, looks safe, looks happy, no obvious harm. As most of us at this conference seem want to do, we do love a good quote. And there's a few good ones there, a couple of surprising ones from my point of view. Good old Walt Disney, who would have thought? Given the controversial nature of the man, I don't think you need me to read those out. The top one is the one that I've seen quoted most. I had no idea who actually said it, but that was interesting. So what I'm getting at is the value of life itself, and we want that life to be a good one. So we take precautions to protect the likelihood that it will be, in fact, a good life. All these things can be said to come under the umbrella of safeguarding, protecting the things we value, the things that are important to us. By our very presence in this room, it stands to reason that something that is important to all of us happens to be another prize. I'll have to get my purse out. So I'd expect you to agree that it is worth, in fact, protecting and worth safeguarding. Then there are others who have drawn the same conclusion with those quotes, and hopefully will be some of the ones who resonate with what's up there. So what is it about citizen advocacy that we want to safeguard? The answer to that has to be, when all's said and done, because there's a lot of all said and done at this conference, topics as diverse as the day is long, but the answer has to be sound citizen advocacy practice, without which there is naught to protect. And inherently, this means we need a depth of knowledge to be able to deliver on sound citizen advocacy practice. Little anecdote for you, and I had to consult with a few learned friends about this. The genesis of what I'm going to be talking about today happened back in 2015 when Mitchell Peters and Rosie Albrecht were travelling to the US for the International SRV conference that happened in Providence. A few nice little memories there for you. And the moral coherency event that followed. During that workshop, Mitchell suggested to Rosie that we in Australia should think about and establish a citizen advocacy study group. The idea was subsequently mentioned to John Armstrong, who was also in the US at the time. Both Rosie and John thought it was a good idea, and as they say in the classics, the rest is history. So the Australian Citizen Advocacy Group was conceived. Some important thinking, however, went into shaping the idea. So the purpose, of course, had to be defined. Part of the issue about that is making sure that those involved in that original conversation, or those original conversations, were in fact all on the same page. And if they weren't, to really distill it down and to make sure that not only they were, but those whom they were inviting to participate really knew what they were getting into. So, like anything that's worthwhile in life, having a clearly defined purpose was very important. I think the important part for me, at least at the beginning, was the composition. Who's going to be involved in this citizen advocacy study group? So obviously it had to be people who were well motivated, really had a genuine interest in citizen advocacy, really wanted to learn about and deepen their knowledge, and were committed to citizen advocacy as Wolfensberger devised it. The next thing, well, how was this citizen advocacy study group going to happen? Is there anybody here who's ever been involved in a study group for another topic? Yep. What was that, Sharon? SRV. Oh, silly me, yes. So study groups, the notion is fairly simple and pretty easy for us to understand, but they all operate somewhat differently. Very rarely would you see that they operate exactly the same. So you might put your hand up to want to attend a study group, but it might not necessarily be what you perceived it would be. So the agenda needed to be discussed, and that really probably is the most critical part of all citizen advocacy study group gatherings. And the agenda is really well thought through. It's based on very important information, but one of the things that I love about the agenda is that it actually builds upon the previous study groups. Not exclusively, but there is like a sequential level of learning that is operating when the agenda is set. Of course, there's dealing with, the basic things of logistics. How are we going to get all these people, pretty poorly resourced people for the most, from all over the country together? And there's usually at least one, sometimes two or three people who put their hands up to take the lead on the logistics for that particular gathering. There are diverse locations. We've been all around Australia. We've even been to New Zealand, and that was a great experience. In fact, it was our most recent experience, and it seems very distant now because darn COVID got in the way. It is 2 full days of study, and it is actually fairly intense. A lot of fun, sure, but it's quite intense and deliberately so. Otherwise, we couldn't really call it a study group. I just thought I'd put up a little bit of a timeline here. So, as I said, 2015 was that original conversation. At the end of that year, an invitation was sent out inviting people to actually participate in the very first study group, which was held at Victor Harbour. Great memories. Anybody who happened to have been there would never, ever, ever forget the laugh of our host, Jean. It's embedded in my heart. Then Maroochydore, Queensland, Sunbury and Victoria, and all over the joint, as you can see. Now, I said there was a lot of fun. That's true, particularly at night when we down tools and do have our networking and our social engagement. But the study group is disciplined. It is very organised. It's in fact quite orderly. And we record what's happened. So it's not just a gathering of people with like minds and like hearts for a bit of light entertainment. It's really serious stuff, but the knowledge building is critical. The relationship building is just as critical from my point of view. But we've got to remember the background to all of this is not just to learn. The background is about safeguarding, and not just safeguarding the knowledge, but safeguarding the sustainability, the continuity, the value of citizen advocacy into the future. Things that attendees will notice about the Citizen Advocacy Group, as I've said, is that there is an order of discipline, and I've said it's lovingly mixed with mutual regard and a goodly dose of fun. The Citizen Advocacy Groups are well organised, although attendees recognise the need for discipline if its purpose is to be served and for the people to leave with a positive learning experience, not just to leave and say, well, that was a waste of time. I can't imagine anybody participating in those groups would ever even think about that. One of the great things for me about the Citizen Advocacy Study Group, and I was thinking about this as compared to our conference, a conference is a time when you can comparatively lightly touch on a range of topics. But the study group, we dive in and we take a real close look at a specific topic. It's quite energising and enlightening in many ways to have things pointed out to you that you've just previously, oh yeah, I know what that's about, taken it for granted. But that delving really bears a lot of fruit. It's also a classic way in which we as individuals can pass on information and knowledge to each other. We can become the keys to another's deeper understanding about a particular important part of sound citizen advocacy practice. The other thing that I like about the study group, we can put ideas in each other's heads completely unintentionally and oftentimes completely unawares. But I know I've often taken away a list of things, attend to that at our program when we get back. That's really exciting because you don't even have to confess that or advise that to the person who's given you the idea. You can just go and do it. Improve your own practice. Oftentimes, you'll get those real light bulb moments. And I'm not just talking about, learning from Rosie or somebody, a particular issue, but I'm talking about light bulb moments when something that you have hitherto taken for granted as, yep, I'm all over that. The light bulb moment shows, oh my goodness, I've only been looking at this in this narrow way. In fact, there are other ways to look at things. I haven't yet, but I do confess I'm waiting for the time when my light bulb moment will be, oh my goodness, I've always looked at something this way and really it's something different. The great thing about those light bulb moments is that they are handled gently, very unobtrusively, and sometimes quite unknowingly by whoever's presenting on a particular topic. It's a great way to learn where you don't feel or need to feel under any threat of being exposed as a novice or a newbie or somebody who has actually been practicing good citizen advocacy processes for a long time, but might not have been quite on point on one particular thing. These are the benefits that I've chosen to share with you today from my own personal reflections. It does, in fact, offer that safe, focused, disciplined learning environment. It can motivate you when you feel unmotivated. Sometimes things can be happening in a program and you think, oh my God, I've signed up to go to that study group. I've already booked my flights. I better attend. And when you get there, it is just the best feeling. It motivates you to get back into the swing of things, and it's almost like a secret personal recommitment. It can be a great source of mutual encouragement for those times when we might share amongst the gathering some of the issues that we're struggling with. It provides positive, non-judgmental feedback. It's a safe place to ask practice-related questions that you might have been holding back on. It offers a means to both learning and teaching. And for me, I have to confess, prior to engaging or being part of this study group, I had never participated in any other study group. And so I didn't realise that part of the expectation was that I'd actually be presenting as well. And what a fabulous way to not force, but sort of induce yourself to learn much more about a particular topic and ensure that you really are around it and feel confident and look competent enough to present on that topic. It is fabulous the way that that is an inbuilt part of the agenda. It can make learning fun. It gives that collegial, emotional and intellectual support and nourishment, forges firm friendships and motivates and encourages us to hone our practice for the right reasons. I said just towards the end of Jack's presentation how much I personally have got out of attending a CAPE. Through confessions in this room, I appreciate the study groups as much, if not more, than a CAPE. It is a way that I have found suits me for my needs for personal growth and development. Don't you love that? I love that image. My personal favourite is that the CA study groups are gatherings like visiting what I call an ideas garden, where there is a strong theme around one specific topic, but there are so many truly interesting presentations and so many knowledge gifts. So here's the membership. Who's involved? So mostly people within the citizen advocacy movement will seek involvement. Those who have a sincere desire to acquire or strengthen their knowledge, they support the purposes of the group. We saw that earlier. They're likely to benefit from and contribute to the group. So it's not just sitting on the perimeter and being that wallflower, it's about participating actively. At first, it might be participating actively by asking questions and engaging in the conversation, but you will be expected to contribute at some point. Membership of and participation in the group doesn't adversely affect the functioning or survival of the group. So if we go back to remember the purposes, this is about studying citizen advocacy, not having someone come with an agenda where they want to talk about other things and divert the group from their purpose. So we're really quite particular and disciplined about that. And finally, understanding that individuals participate in the Citizen Advocacy Study Group. We aren't there as a representative of a program if we're associated with one. So there's the members and how to apply for membership. This is really important too. Rosie at the moment is the person who will receive expressions of interest for anybody who's new to the idea, who may wish to come along. So we've got her contact details up there for you. feel welcome to make a note of them. I'm sure Rosie will give them to you at some other time if you so wish. I was thinking to myself, how did this order get sorted? And then I realised it's alphabetical. So Heather Buck, who you've seen here, Bob Lee, who you've seen on the screen, Rosie, Mitchell and myself. Just a small little group. Nothing special about us, certainly nothing special about us, other than our deep dedication and commitment to keeping this going. And probably the other thing, I'll be a bit presumptuous here, Mitchell and Rosie, the other commitment we have is to get the next one off the ground, and hopefully that'll be in the second part of this year. So these people haven't just created the study group for our own interest, or even that of people currently involved in citizen advocacy. There's a real sense of wanting to pass the baton, to leave a legacy for those who will come after us, those who will continue to practice and protect citizen advocacy, and dare we dream to nurture it to a fresh growth, a spurt of growth in Australia once again. I'd like to conclude with a little confession. Most of us know how hard it can be to stick with citizen advocacy. The difficult lives, the hardship, the abuse, the neglect, and all of those negative things that we encounter or otherwise know about make citizen advocacy a tough gig. The internal strength to keep on because we know how important this work can wane. The grass can sometimes appear awfully greener elsewhere, and goodness knows that temptations are tossed around and it can sometimes seem all too irresistible. That's why I love attending these gatherings. The learning experience is a given, but the replenishment of my soul is my hidden agenda. Citizen Advocacy Study Group is my tribe. They're what sustain me. And I am very proud to be a core member. To have been invited to be a core member was a shock because they're just my people, my tribe. Thank you very much.